I felt like I can't necessarily go back to China easily to report, maybe as a tourist, but the atmosphere is very difficult for journalists. The kind of reporting that was done for Daughters of the Bamboo Grove, I don't think I could do today.
All right, ladies, I'm gonna have to interrupt you because we're gonna have to start the event, and we'll have our audiences ready. I think our interpreters are in place, and I'm sure you have questions to each other as well, which we're looking forward to hear as well. So let's get this started.
Mhm.
Okay.
Is there a moderator? I'm not quite sure how
I'm the
doing
moderator.
this.
I have
Okay.
a today who's working with me, Addie. Addie, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Addie. Nice to meet you.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you. And you said there's a translator. Will we translate into the Chinese?
Yes. In the channel next, I think below, next to your Zoom page on the right bottom corner, you'll see an Earth-shaped icon. You can click.
Uh-huh. Is that more? I don't actually see that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, we will mostly speak in English, no?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get started. Let me just start the thing. Okay. All right. Tony, can you start recording? Thank you.
Legacy of an adopted child. Once there were two women who never knew each other. One you do not remember, the other you call mother. Two different lives shaped to make you one. One became your guiding star, the other became your sun. The first one gave you life, and the second taught you to live it. The first gave you a need for love, the second was there to give it. One gave you a nationality, the other gave you a name. One gave you a talent, the other gave you aim. One gave you emotions, the other calmed your fears. One saw your first sweet smile, the other dried your tears. One sought for you a home that she couldn't provide. The other prayed for a child, and her hope was not denied. And now you ask me through your tears the age-old question unanswered through the years. Heredity or environment, which are you the product of? Neither, my darling, neither. Just two different kinds of love. By an unknown author, a proud and loving mother to the amazing Emma Yu Chow Chow.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 8th Online Adoption Dialogue, created and endorsed by the Mother's Bridge of Love. This event will start promptly. Actually, it has already started. Please note that this meeting will be recorded. Please feel free to turn off your camera if you are not comfortable with your image sharing. Thank you. And this event provides simultaneous interpretation service. Please select your language channel at the right bottom of your Zoom page. You will see an Earth-shaped icon. Click on it and you can choose English or Chinese. Now, I'd love to introduce to you the charity organization behind this amazing event, the Mother's Bridge of Love, or as we often call it, the MBL. The MBL is a UK-based charity founded by Xinran. Do you want to wave, Xinran? In 2004. Over the past 21 years, MBL has served as a bridge between birth and adoptive culture, between the East and the West, and between the rich and the poor. We have hosted hundreds of cultural exchange programs with adoptive families from 27 countries. Last year, MBL was actually celebrating its 20th birthday. From 2022 onwards, MBL has organized 3 annual UK English-Chinese bilingual recitation competition, attracting students aged 6 to 18 from across the UK to compete in their understanding and mastering of both Chinese and the English language. We have also created the Books for Kids project, which has helped establish 28 school libraries in rural China, as well as the Colour of Us art exhibition in London, featuring 85 original artworks by young people from around the world, including 33 pieces done by disabled children. During COVID, MBL organized 14 hugely successful online forums featuring prominent cultural figures and developed collaborations with organizations in Europe, China, and the United States. You're seeing all 8 events that we've held at MBL, the Adoption Dialogue. This event was set up by the Mother's Bridge of Love in 2024, last year, with the aim of helping international Chinese adoptees and adoptive families communicate with each other, raise social awareness around adoption, and support other adoptees and adoptive families across the world. Previously, we have successfully collaborated with Canada, the United States, Norway, and the United Kingdom to hold multiple adoption forums. In 2025, this series of events revolves around adoption healing. We hope to highlight real personal experiences and feelings from adoptees and adoptive families and connect people through sharing and hearing and healing together. Tonight's event will focus on Barbara Damick, the author of Daughters of the Bamboo Group, From China to America, a true story of abduction, adoption, and separated twins, as well as Xinran, the author of Message from an Unknown Chinese Mother, Stories of Love and Loss. She's also the founder of the Mother's Bridge of Love, to share their observations, thoughts and feelings and reflections on adoption from China. We hope to explore the nuanced and often overlooked realities behind mainstream narratives and the insights through both remarkable writers writing, reporting, and interacting with families on all sides of the adoption process. I'm your host today. My name is Siwei Tan. I'm currently a PhD candidate at the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. I'm also an adoptee, born and raised in China. This year, I'm serving as a volunteer at the Mother's Bridge of Love. It's a great honor for me to host this event and to meet you all today. I have a co-host tonight, Adeline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adeline, also known as Addie. And yeah, I'm honored to be co-hosting today. I live in Edinburgh, Scotland with my husband and 1.5-year-old daughter. And I'm an MBA student currently and was the co-author of a book called Whatever Next on adoptee identities. But yeah, I'm excited to be co-hosting today.
Thank you, Addie. All right, let's dig in. So tonight, the event program will go as follows. You have seen a short introduction of the organization that created and endorsed this event, the Mother's Bridge of Love, as well as the events held previously this year. We'll now move on to the sharing session. In this event, we'll have two panelists who will share, as I said, their insights, thoughts and feelings, observations and reflections on adoption from China. Each sharer will have 15 minutes to share their stories. You don't have to use up all the 15 minutes. You can just be free to talk for however long you want within 15 minutes. During and after the sharing, you may put your questions or comments in the chat box. Remember, you can put your questions in the chat box while our panelists are sharing, and we'll get to them in the subsequent discussion and Q&A session. In the Q&A session, the floor will be opened to you, our audiences today. You may ask questions to a specific sharer or both sharers or all the audience present today. After the Q&A session, we'll invite my colleague Tongyu Li to share her reviews and insights for the adoption dialogue next year. Before we move on to the final closing remarks, this event will last for approximately 90 minutes. Now, without further ado, let's get started with the sharing today. First, we have Barbara Damick. Barbara Damick is a prize-winning author and former foreign correspondent who spent 7 years as Beijing bureau chief for the Los Angeles Times. Her previous books include Eat the Buddha, Life and Death in a Tibetan Town, and best-selling Nothing to Envy, Ordinary Lives in North Korea, which won the Samuel Johnson Prize. Her work has been shortlisted for the Pulitzer, National Book Award, and National Book Critics Circle Award, and has won awards from the Asia Society and Overseas Press Club. She also contributes to The New Yorker. Please remember, our audiences, you can put your questions and comments to Barbara in the chat box as she's sharing. So we'll get to these questions in the subsequent Q&A session. Thank you. The floor is yours, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Alice. It's a delight to be here. And as I've said, I was really honored to be asked by Xinran to speak because I was very inspired by her work, and the adoptive family that I wrote about also are big fans of your work. So I'll start at the beginning. I have 15 minutes, yes, for my presentation. So I'll start at the beginning. I moved to Beijing in 2017 to become bureau chief for the Los Angeles Times, and I spent 7 years there, and then 5 more years going in and out. And from the very beginning, I was quite interested in adoption. I had several friends who adopted, and I should start by saying that I'm of an age of women who we sort of entered adulthood in the 80s, and it was a time that we as young women were told, oh, you can do everything. You can have a career, you can have a family, so on and so forth. And for many people, many of my friends entered their 30s and 40s thinking, oh my gosh, I wanted to have kids and I was too late. So I knew quite a few people who adopted from China. And one of my best friends and her husband adopted in Guangzhou in 2002. And it was, my own son was 2 years old at the time. But this was such a wonderful experience. And I believed the same narrative as really everybody else, that these were all these girls were abandoned children uh, whose parents didn't want to raise them, preferred boys, and they were getting a new life, and they were in effect being rescued. This is sometimes called the white savior narrative. I'm not so critical of the adoptive parents, but this is an expression I hear a lot from people, and there was no reason to question it. But when I got to China in 2007, I was skeptical. And one of the things I mentioned this a little bit that makes me skeptical is I saw such a a very environmentally conscious attitude in China. And really nothing was discarded. Everything was recycled. Everything in I lived in a diplomatic compound in Beijing was recycled. And I thought, are people just discarding healthy baby girls? I didn't believe this. And at the same time, and the timing of this is very important, these were the early days of the internet, QQ. It was before Weibo really started in earnest, before WeChat. But these stories were coming out from villages, the kind of villages that most foreigners, actually many of the Chinese I know, would never have visited. Really remote, poor villages with high rates of illiteracy and people without Guangxi connections. And so I started investigating these at the time were sort of rumors in Guizhou and Hunan and this area of southeastern central China, where many of the adoptees came from. And I met many families who said, our daughters were taken away, and we didn't abandon them. Family planning officials, burst into our home when the husband is away or when the grandparents were babysitting and took the babies. And they told us that, we didn't have the right to raise them, that this was allowed under Chinese law. And again, these were people with low degrees of literacy, and some of them were easily intimidated, but they weren't stupid either. And this is what you find, traveling through rural China. You meet people who have never been to school, have had no opportunities, maybe not literate, but they're actually pretty smart. And so these birth parents had started sending, putting reports through QQ. And in any case, every remote village has somebody. There's one young man or young woman who's gotten an education, gone to the city, and is online. So that's how we found out about these reports. And the topic that's in my book is a family who live in Hunan province near Shaoyang, and I had heard about them from some others. Actually, I should say, and this is a point I always want to make, is Chinese journalists. I got credit for breaking the story, but Chinese journalists were way ahead of me. Chinese journalists were working on these stories for years. They just weren't allowed to publish. But anyway, I heard about this one family. They had twins. They were a very, I hate to say typical, but a typical young couple. They had married in their early 20s. Their firstborn was a girl. Their secondborn was another girl. The paternal grandfather was really pushing them to try again for a boy. So the mother got pregnant again. She had a big, huge belly, was convinced she was having a boy. She hid out in a shack in a bamboo grove behind their home. And lo and behold, gave birth to not one, but two girls. And okay, this is maybe where they're not typical, but the father, especially of these girls, was delighted. He really didn't care about having a son. He was just a guy who loved his daughters, and he was like, wow, two more daughters, how fabulous. And we're gonna raise them. But it wasn't easy. They were poor, and they tried to, you can read the whole complicated story. It's a bit of a shaggy dog story, but they tried to hide them by separating them, leaving one with an aunt and uncle who were in the same village. And family planning, because twins would be very recognizable, family planning found out. They stormed into this house while the aunt was alone babysitting. And these were up to 10 men, immobilized her, pure force, grabbed the baby, threw her in a car. The whole village ran after them, but they were the only ones who had a car and got away. And that was the last they saw of this girl. She was close to 2 years old at the time. She was not an infant. And through a very sort of old-fashioned gumshoe work and social media, I figured out where that baby was. Um, and social media is a big part of this story. But at that time, my stories ran in 2009. That's when I was investigating this phenomenon. American adoptive parents were putting a lot of information about their children on social media, and there were adoption groups actually on Yahoo organized by the orphanage, the Social Welfare Institute, where the babies were fostered. A lot of parents were raising money for their orphanages. And this particular family had put up a lot of pictures in the story. And, I knew the birth family in China thought that she had been harvested for her organs. There was, nothing was any more plausible than anything else. To be in America would be just as unlikely. But I was pretty sure she had been adopted, and I knew which orphanage, and I knew, approximately when, and I knew her age, and more importantly, I knew what she looked like, because when I had done these interviews in rural Hunan, I had met the birth mother and the twin who was left behind. This was a 9-year-old girl, and to me, babies look alike. Of any race, babies look alike, but when by they're 3 or 4, they start to get features. And so I located this girl. I'm running low on time. The adoptive family didn't want anything to do with me and begged me not to publish anything. And I had no intention of publishing because the girl was 9 years old. But I contacted the Chinese family and told them I thought their daughter was, alive and well, living in the US. I didn't say where at the time. They didn't ask. And they were actually very gracious and understanding. The good thing that came out of this story for everybody was that the Chinese reporters who had been trying to publish stories for years, because my story made a scandal, now they were able to write about the scandal. So Saishin did a big story and it did get out. And I mean, there was something that happened. And, that was it. Until 2017. 8 years later, I got a message from somebody in the adoptive family, a half-brother, who said, our girl, her name was Esther, her name was originally Feng Feng. Our girl is a teenager now, and she really wants to be in touch with her birth family and her twin sister. Can you help? And that's how I got involved. And I'm going to cut through a couple of years because it took quite a few messages on WeChat and a couple of video calls, and it took a while to build trust. But in 2019, I went with the adoptee, whose name is Esther, her adoptive mother, a sister also adopted, and I have the half-brother to China. We went for Lunar New Year, and we spent a week in the village, basically, with the family. And, I can address or speak later about some of my observations about the relationship between the birth mother and the adoptive mother. But a lot of it was really lovely. In the first days, they were very standoffish. The American mother was, kind of hugging and very affectionate, and the Chinese mother was, standoffish. It was sort of actually every cultural trope was true. It was just different. But by the end, they really, became like all family. And it was interesting to me that the mothers had quite a bit in common. Originally, Chinese adoptees were told, oh, you're so lucky you've gone to a rich Western home. And it's like this lucky girl thing, which drives people crazy. And, what had happened was that actually the American family wasn't doing very well financially. The adoptive father had died, and it was a very typical American story, not quite enough health insurance, not quite enough pension. They were on a very small budget. And the Chinese family, since the birth of these twins in 2000 to 2019, had really prospered. They built this huge house in the village, and every member of the family was working and bringing in money. And, it wasn't clear to me that, I thought maybe it's hard to compare because it's a different economic system. I thought maybe the Chinese family was wealthier. And the mothers both had been, frustrated as young women. The Chinese mother, whose name is Zanhua, had really wanted to be, she was not at all educated, functionally illiterate, but she had smart, energetic person, had really wanted to, do business, do, something. She was one of the first in her village to leave. She was selling bags in a neighborhood market. She was very frustrated that she had been pushed into marriage and motherhood at an early age. The American adoptive mother, Marcia, was also, she's a really actually brilliant woman, but never had much chance for education, was also pushed into early marriage. She had, in fact, wanted to be a missionary. She's a evangelical Christian, not a Trump supporter. I should not get into that, but very independent minded. So they had that in common, and they really bonded. And I could see, I see the book as, again, sort of a microcosm of looking at these two families and what do they say about China and the US. There were just, you have to endless, cultural misunderstandings. Marcia would pray before every meal. Just they didn't always understand each other, but much in common. And I loved looking at China and the US through the aperture of these two families and the twins. And we were talking about families, but I'll speak more about the twins themselves later.
All right. So thank you, Barbara. Addie, do you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I can't wait to hear more about what you have to say about the book and the story of the twins. So now let's welcome our second chair today, Shinran. She is a British Chinese journalist, author, speaker, and advocate for women's issues in China. She is the founder of the Mother's Bridge of Love and the author of 9 bestsellers, including The Good Women of China and Message from an Unknown Chinese Mother. She frequently contributes to The Guardian and the BBC. Please remember that you can put your questions and comments to Shinran and Barbara in the chat box as you listen to their sharings. We will get these questions in the subsequent Q&A session. Okay, thank you.
My turn. Hello, 你好. From Prague. I just flew in to Prague for the family issue, and actually it's a memorial service tomorrow, and for the big family, yeah, my later husband, the whole family, because the Jewish background, so they will be killed in end of 1943. So every year I have family here for this memorial. And I become very emotional when Barbara talked about her journey of the book. And in Chinese, we call this book is a 竹林之女, yeah, the daughters of Bamboo School. And actually, when I was requested to review the book, that I thought quite a lot because when I became a journalist in 1988, I had no idea about this issue because I grew up in big city in Beijing, and also I never heard about people bandit girls or also even didn't give them chance to live. Until I become a journalist, I interviewed a lot of people and I include a group of the mothers, the women, and also the girls and the midwives and people working in the orphanage. But I have to be honest, before I published my first book, The Good of China, and I never ever thought about in this kind of adoption at all. So until I had the first book tour in America, 2002, and the huge group of American family come to see me, and then they asked me so many questions, but above all, only one question is why Chinese mother didn't want their daughters. So since then, I have to say, I have really received so many adopted mothers and adoptees who have wrote a book on that, included today in the group, Norwegian Rohan and people, the mother from Denmark and from Australia and from UK and from America. More than I think 32 or 34 mothers write a book about this kind of journey from adopting their children and until what they learned from others. And on personal, I involved in some documentary, particularly it's about twins being adopted by different countries. So when I read Barbara's book, Barbara, I didn't tell you, I was in tears because my charity, since we set up in 2004, we've been working so hard with the 27 countries who adopted the Chinese daughters. Only one family we found adopted twins. All the twins almost separated and adopted by different countries. So when we interview them, and also between the siblings, you know this kind of feeling is your family, but they were teased out by this kind of either policies or what kind of reasons. So for me, I grew up from this kind of political period, living life like orphan. So when I read your book and other mother's book, and when I work with the adoptees, include Sui, who's the team leader of this MBL Adoption Dialogue. When they talk about this kind of life, unique time, and when we say it's unique time, there is 160,000 Chinese girls being adopted by 27 countries. So this is, I feel that, what we have done in the 21 years time with MBR, over 1,000 volunteers, but for their lifetime, maybe just one drop of the water of this big ocean. Think about those adoptees. One day they become a mother, they have a family, they have a story for their own children. Is there any answer there? Why their Chinese mother gave up them? It's not by one reason, by one uniform answer at all. So like in my book, The Message from Our Chinese Mother, so after my 40 years research, I put it into only 3 main reasons. One is maybe like old Asian culture, the boy are more valuable than girls. And the second reason is everybody now think is their own child policy. And also actually from our research, it's quite a big numbers of adoptees come from a very young Chinese mother, because China, when they opened the 1980s, they adopted Western sexual relationship, this kind of relationship, and from 1990s. So lots of young Chinese without enough sexual education or basic knowledge. So when they had a baby, they scared. So it's quite a big number of the adoptees come from this kind of background as well. But unfortunately, and this topic is still not open in China or in many countries as well. So this is why I feel every time when I read a book as Barbara, the book or the letters from adoptees, like I had a conversation, long conversation with Eddie. Sorry, in
Yes.
yeah, with you. Do you remember?
Yeah.
We both in tears in Edinburgh, a National Gallery.
Yes.
I can feel you desperately want to get answer as well. And you desperately want to know how many people has this kind, the wanting, the hope. And also I was very touched when you say, when you become a mother, you hold your baby, think about your own mother. So that is most got me, and also recharge me again and again in over 20 years, maybe 40 years time. So I want to thank you all from my deep heart to what you're doing and what you have to give me this kind of love and trust and sharing. 谢谢你. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks.
谢谢欣然 ，Thank you 欣然。Let me get back to the PowerPoint. I think we still have a lot of time today, actually, for the questions and Q&A. And I'm sure the panelists would have questions for each other as well, which we're keen to hear. And but before we jump into that, I'm going to introduce our Q&A session so that we'd be more clearer on what we're going to do next. So basically, we'll open the floor to you, our audiences. This is the next session of today's event. You may ask question to a specific sharer or both sharers or all the audiences present today. And you can put your questions and comments in the chat box. After each question is announced, the designated sharer can answer the question, or you can ask for help from other sharers and the audiences as well. If the question is not designated to anyone, please raise your hand to answer it, except for our panelists. You can also answer questions one by one. You can also answer questions that you're interested in. Sharers and audiences who are answering questions, please keep each answer within 3 minutes so that we may have more time for more questions today. We do have a lot of time today, so I'm not really in a hurry pushing us, squeezing the time. Anyways, all right, I'm going to close the PowerPoint and let's get to the questions. I'm going to start with the first question posted within the chat box. I think this one is for Barbara. And
Yeah, I can read the question.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just read it. This woman, is it Lei or Lee? I'm not sure. Is wondering if we could speak about Esther's adopted sister, Victoria's experience going back to China and seeing Esther connect with her Chinese family. And I love this question. So as I mentioned, and this is for people who haven't read the book, I'll bring you up to this. Esther has a sister also adopted from China, 2 years older, and they were raised in the same household. And I find that very interesting because Victoria was great on the trip. She was absolutely fabulous. She was really excited to be with Esther in China. Um, she was a great participant on the trip, but she had no interest in looking for her own family. And Victoria was adopted from um, Jiangxi province, quite close. And I had said to her at some point, should we make a detour to, visit your home province? Because we were flying into Changsha, the capital of Hunan. And she said, and she's quoted in the book saying this, um, I, I don't really need to know more. I feel like there's a door that if you look for your birth family, there's a door you're opening, and you have to think, what need do I have? And if I don't have that need, I don't want to open that door. And the reason I really was interested in her response was, for adoptees, there's no right or wrong. Esther and Victoria were raised in the same household with the same parents. They're very close in age. They had the same experiences. They grew up in a rural area of the US, so they felt a little bit odd as as Asians in a very white bread part of rural Texas. But you know, completely different reactions to this issue of searching. And because so many adoptees say to me, should I search? And there's not really a wrong or right answer. I think um, Victoria's response that I don't want to open that door because I don't know what I'll find and I don't have that need is perfectly legitimate. So that's the thing. And it was also very interesting to me that Esther came to the US when she was about 2.5, and Victoria was a year, but Esther seemed much more comfortable with Chinese-ness. She loved the spicy Hunan food. She was like very adept with using her chopsticks. Victoria couldn't take the spicy food, couldn't use her chopsticks. It was always very funny because whenever we asked for chopsticks, they would hand them to me as the white person. But, I lived 7 years in China and almost 5 years in Korea. I'm very good with my chopsticks. So, it's just that in this family, you saw the range of experiences.
Thank you, Barbara.
For the next question, it's this is for you both. I'm sure you can see the question, but comparing your different life experiences, Barbara's spending 7 years in China, Shinran spending most of your recent life in Europe. They say, Hao says, I'm really curious about how you guys view China in such a unique perspectives regarding your personal experiences. And for Shinran, how do you view the existing cognitive generation gaps within yourself regarding to your understanding of old China and contemporary China? If you both can answer the questions about your perspectives.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not Chinese. In fact, my Chinese language abilities are very limited. So, I can only see China as an outsider, but I'm probably there more recently. And um, there's so much change in China. And this was a question I wanted to ask Shinran, because this whole narrative of the baby girls dumped in wells and abandoned in boxes, no more value than a kitten. I mean, that's real, but it goes back some years. Um, and I was going to ask Shinran how she feels things have changed. My observation was that, certainly in the 80s, when the one-child policy took effect, there were many, many abandoned babies. There's no doubt about that. But things were really China was changing so rapidly. And by the 1990s, when international adoption started, there was I don't think there were that many babies who were gladly abandoned. In fact, I don't like to use the word abandoned. I say relinquished, because so many of these children would not have been given up without the one-child policy. Yes, I mean, there's no denying that there's a cultural preference for boys, or there was. But, as time went on, especially, getting closer to 2000, Chinese families were getting much, much wealthier, and their attitudes towards girls were really changing. A lot of young women from migrant families were working in Guangzhou in the south as factory workers, making electronics, making iPhones, sending money back to their parents. And I think that Chinese families, even rural traditional Chinese families, were, realizing that, hey, girls can take pretty damn good care of their parents as they age. They're not useless. Um, and so what I found, there's not an exact cutoff, is that after maybe 2000, it's hard to say, um, babies were not really being abandoned. That's when you got into the coercive, stealing of babies or tricking birth parents into giving up their children. Some of the really nasty trafficking really happened sort of later on. And, I think it was a supply and demand situation. We're always talking in the US about the Chinese supply line. Um, American and Western families really wanted healthy, adoptable girls, and the Chinese adoptees had become the adoptees of choice. They're cute, they're members of I'm doing air quotes here, model minority, um, supposedly good at school, um, and healthy. Their mothers, these rural Chinese women were unlikely to smoke or drink or use drugs. They were not likely to be obese. And so these were the adoptees. If you had to adopt, this was the baby you wanted. In fact, some people wanted them, even if they had their own children. Uh, and at that time, the supply line was running out. Chinese families were not willing to I'm going to say relinquish their daughters. So that's what I think changed.
Yeah. Um, in my personal opinion, actually based on my experience on this, I would say, first of all, no such a one China there. So when I'm working with Western media and to myself, research as well, I found that particularly in the last 40 years, China, just like Barbara just mentioned, changed in huge, yeah. And actually China is like a jump in the queue. And what the process we have done, almost like, for example, in UK, is there 250 years time they complete this kind of from religion control to the democracy or development today. But in China, and since everybody can see from a poor country and become superpower in the world, but as inside from China and working with the peasants and farmers, or particularly population, 74% of the Chinese population actually they come from countryside and the farmers. We have 65 cities in China, but if you go to the countryside, you will see still lots of people working in the but in the field, it's very hard. Their income very limited as well. So this part of China, from my personal experience, I think I have been missing and hidden or forgotten by the social media or by the main, how do you say, media stream, also by people's, many Western people only travel in the east part of China, which is most adoptees come from that part. Yeah, most adoptees come from east part of China, and the middle is like a Hunan, Hubei. Very few from Guizhou, Yunnan. For west part of China, so many poor kids still left. And my charity has set up more than 30 children's countryside village library for kids. We call the 留守儿童. So they're still living. It's unbelievable. This kind of living condition. And in the winter, it's very cold. In the summer, there has no clothes, even like Mo Yan's story in his book, which is true. So for me, China is like, how do you say, huge gap between the city and the countryside, and also between the generations. It's very difficult for the young Chinese. I can give you an example. When I was young, in my early 20s, and my parents are still warning me, say, come home before 6 o'clock in the evening. Okay, be careful and don't cross the line. But come to my son, and he will have so many girlfriends. And also that generation even become so popular for the girls, had to change the boyfriends. And so for me, it's unbelievable. I couldn't understand that when I come to London. When people started kissing me or hugging me, I was so panicked. Like Barbara said, I'm pushing people away. See, I'm Chinese, don't do this to me. But now you see the young generation, they enjoy this kind of, this kind of not just a relationship or body language. They are more open. But again, this part of the young generation, most come from east part China, from cities, from how do you say, very good living condition area. But if you go to the countryside, you still can meet those young Chinese and scared to be touched, and then they start this kind of, they sold for the marriage and had the baby from a very young age. So this is first thing is my view for today's China. No such a China and no such a Chinese woman. It's colorful and in many different levels as well. And the other things I would say, yeah, China up and down all the time, changed a lot, very quick. But again, why this happened? And because we miss quite a lot of structure, of legal structure, of society support. For example, in the West, when a woman pregnant, then you have lots of advice club for this kind of knowledge, for the pregnant woman, for the young mothers, and for the baby, how to look after, But in China, it's only very limited cities have this kind of foundation of society. The most area had no this kind of such things. So it's very difficult to say. How do you see the difference? Like I lecture for the Bath University nearly 22 years. Yeah, more than 22 years for the interpreter class. I can see each time, each year, very different. It's a few years ago, people still didn't believe this adoption. and they thought was, the Western story. They have no idea America started this adoption from 1991, and China joined the international adoption from 1992. So lots of information was blocked. So I want to complain all to say lots of Chinese, young Chinese, naive, or they don't care about the society because they have no information channel to know that. So I don't know. Have I answered the question? Oh, someone said you can't hear me. I don't know. Can you hear me now? It's
Yeah.
quite noisy in the hotel. Sorry about that.
We can hear you, Xinyan. Thank you for answering the question, both ladies. I can speak from an adoptee's point of view myself. Before getting to know Xinyan and working as a volunteer at MBL, I myself had very limited knowledge of international adoption. Although I have been raised as an adoptee and I've known from a very young age that I was adopted. So this is what Xinyan and Barbara had said in her book, is definitely concrete. We're still at the very beginning phase of getting to unveil the realities that many international adoptees face. All right, let's get to the next question from Alison. I think this is designated to both our panelists. Do you think there will be any international or domestic legal or public recourse for the trafficking and coercive nature of the one-child policy?
But I can speak a little bit about that. Inside China, there was some there were some officials from the family planning agency who were punished, but it was, very kind of slap on the wrist. Sometimes, oh, nice cat there. It was, they were transferred for their jobs. They were threatened with expulsion from the Communist Party. There was a family of traffickers who were punished and who kind of took the fall for everybody. And that was a very interesting case because these traffickers, who I think I was the first one to interview them, were also from Hunan, had been picking up babies and delivering them to the orphanages for small amounts of money, red envelopes. And it was, I don't think they were actually kidnapping babies. What they were doing is they were providing a service, bringing babies from families who didn't want to keep the babies to the orphanage because it was, it was illegal to abandon a baby. It was illegal to buy a baby. But as I said, the rural Chinese were clever. So they, devised this sort of middleman scheme. But I don't think there was any serious punishment inside China. Outside of China, this is very interesting. There has been quite a large movement against international adoption just in the last few years. The Netherlands has banned its citizens from adopting internationally. I think Quebec has also banned its citizens from adopting internationally. Belgium is considering some laws. Korea has completely stopped adoption, as has China. China suspended overseas adoptions last year. It was pretty much done. And I think there's an increasing awareness that babies adopted from poor countries to richer countries are likely to be trafficked or taken under coercion, whether it's physical coercion or economic coercion. So this movement is really just taking off the last year or so. And I know that many adoption agencies in the US have stopped handling international adoption because of all the concerns about corruption.
Well, from my research is actually adoption was not a new things. Actually, it's a long history based on some religion reasons. Before the 1963, when the birth control pills discovered or developed this kind of process. So adoption was a long history. But after 1990 or 1980s, when adoption became a kind of the business, so the human trafficking and become the growth very fast. From MBL research, my childhood research, we found so many adoptees, the adoption documents, lots of fakes. So when we question about central government, actually, if you noticed from 2015, Chinese government announced over 100,000 the missing, or they said it was a human trafficking in China every year. So this is announced by the government. So also the very first time. And again, and before this kind of human trafficking is more women and from minorities from southwest China and to rest of the poor area of China, like Shandong, Henan, Shanxi, and yeah, this kind of area, they buy women as the wives. But later on, particularly last 2-3 years, the human trafficking children become very serious. It's about human organs transfer. So the age between 11 to 19 and the trafficking, human trafficking now become quite serious in China, in East Asia as well, because this kind of human organs. And also this started, another reason is that China's reduce this kind of death penalty, because before the human organs is from death penalties body. So, but for adoptees, there's a bigger number involved as well. It belong to this as well. This is we discovered from the documents, adoption documents, because of quite a big percentage of the adoption documents are fake. When we tracing down to the local authorities, they had no record and no evidence and nothing in the police station and orphanage. So obviously, this is could be part of human trafficking as well.
Thank you, Xilian, and thank you, Barbara. Let's move on to the next question. All right, so this question is designated to Barbara. How is the relationship between Esther and her biological mom now? And there's another question from the same person to both writers. After an adoptee has had a reunion with their biological family, what happens after that? They might not be able to visit each other as often, there might be language barriers, and meeting online may not suffice. So how do they connect with each other or maintain their relationship after their first meet? Thank you.
Actually, all that, I think, Julie, you answered the question. Yes, I mean, there's stages in a reunion, and I read about this after I hosted the reunion, and I should have known about it. But there's this fantasy, there's a honeymoon, and then there's sort of a cooling off period, and then there's the establishment of a ongoing relationship. In the case of Esther and Shuangjie, her sister, the reunion was really magical. It was all honeymoon. Even though they didn't speak the same language, we had an interpreter with us. They were using their smartphones to interpret. They were really physically close. They played like different childhood games together, card games, and it was really lovely, but it was very hard to continue that relationship. And we went to China in February of 2019 for Lunar New Year, and the plan was for Shuangjie to come to the U.S. the following year. But if you're following your timeline here, the following year was 2020, and everything went to shit, basically. Excuse the language, but the whole U.S.-Chinese relations cratered. China was closed because of COVID. Um, it was, I was advised not even to contact the family on WeChat, just to say, how are you doing? Is everybody healthy? It was that, there was that much, and this chill seemed to really permeate down to the throughout society. And, they really didn't communicate that much in that period. And we lost the momentum for Shuangjie to come to the US, and that never happened. Um, and so they've slowly rebuilt their relationship, but it is very difficult. Even though there's so much AI translation, they message each other on WeChat, but you can only go so far with that. Interestingly, Esther has remained quite emotionally close to her birth mother. And not only does her birth mother not speak English, she's not, entirely literate, or she has marginal literacy. But they send photos and emojis, and in rural China they love emojis, and these different gifts. So there's the affection is there, and I've helped them do a video call during Lunar New Year every year since the reunion, except for 2020 when everything was too much of a mess. Um, and but it's not a fairy tale. As nice as it was, it's not a fairy tale. I think Esther was very lucky in the birth family that she found, because they're an intact family. Everybody seems to love each other. A lot of rural families are frankly very dysfunctional. They've been strained by poverty and migrant work and all these things. This is like a very solid family. And so I think she likes going to, having these virtual reunions and seeing there's a lot of grandchildren now, and it's very nice. But I don't know that they will be able to meet again. It's not easy for a Chinese person to come to the US now. Shuangjie doesn't have a passport. I don't think she'd very easily get a visa for the US.
Well, for this question, may I answer a bit from MBL's research? We found some family from the well-educated background or in the big cities, actually they react very warmly and close, very touching. But some in the countryside, and that's very hard. And many of them even try to hide themselves. They didn't want to get their, to be known by other people. So that means improve the family trees withdrawn, or they're against the one-child policy, or this out of or before the marriage. So it's very much based, depends on the family background, I would say. And also, for example, I was told, and the last 2 years in America is over about maybe 3,000 family, and they got this kind of DNA result. And but not many Chinese family want to get back their daughter, and they're a bit worried. It's about this kind of, China is now is a bit the bubbles, the gossip about international spy. So for many families, they being, worried about this kind of things. So very much depends on the family background and living condition or which part of the China as well.
Thank you, Sinan and Barbara. Addie, do you want to take the next?
Hi, sure. Yeah, about adoptee community and engagement. Yeah, I'll just give you a bit of background. So I'm a Chinese adoptee adopted from Hunan. And so first, I'll just say to Barbara, thank you so much for writing the book. It was incredible getting to read it over the summer. It felt like an experience in itself as an adoptee, adopted from Hunan, and also just discovering motherhood for the first time. I feel like everything has kind of felt like a full circle in a way. And a question for later, we can come back to it for you, but I would love to just hear more about Esther and where she is now, and if she's read the book, and what are her thoughts about it. But yeah, for the adult adoptees in the UK, yeah, so I guess I was adopted into a family in Kansas City with two moms and two younger adoptees as well. One also adopted from China, but a different province, and one from Vietnam. We grew up in the adoptee community, so I've grew up quite comfortably engaging in building adoptee community. It's one of my passions, to be honest. And so when I moved to the UK, I was really searching for something like that when I first moved there in 2019. And I connected with two other Chinese adoptees there in Edinburgh, and we created this group called Whatever Next. It doesn't run anymore, but our goal for it was to create community, open dialogue. That's how our podcast came about, and the book. And we put on events. And so I really enjoyed doing that. The one that I would recommend if you're looking for some is also the one that has been linked, called Catch All. And they run in London, and they do meet up in events. And yeah, we were connected with them, and they're great. So I highly recommend them. There's loads of books and podcasts and movies that I would recommend. I guess, what do I envision? For me, I think an online space is super important since everybody is pretty spread out across the world. There's one conference that I would recommend too, looking into, called the BIPOC conference. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And they hold their conference in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. But it's basically just bringing adult adoptees in different adult adoptees who are in different professions, and bringing their experience and personal and professional experience into the adoptee space, which I think is really cool. Sorry, I'm a little sleep deprived and kind of hopped on coffee, so my thoughts are kind of scattered right now. But oh, I was also gonna just say about the reunion and post-reunion. I'm not in reunion, but I recently saw a documentary that is about reunion called Between Goodbyes, that was just released on PBS earlier this month. It's available online, and it's about a queer Korean adoptee who has been in reunion for over 10 years, and about the nuances, complexities of their relationship and how they maintain it, if it's sustainable, and what kind of decisions they make in between their goodbyes of meeting each other. It's very powerful. Probably one of the best adoptee focused documentaries that I've seen. But yeah, I hope to continue to be in the adoptee community. I think it's great having books like these, like Daughters of the Bamboo Grove and Shinran's writing and books, to contribute to documenting our stories and opening dialogues and challenging the narratives. So yeah, I really appreciate everybody's work.
Thank you.
Addie. If I may also answer the question briefly. I think it would be very interesting to have adoptees only activities. I'm going to say it bluntly. I think for a lot of adoptees who have turned into adults, we haven't got enough time and space to express feelings that have always been suppressed. Suppressed not because we have been coerced not to speak or because we can't or don't have family members to talk to, but as Barbara said in her book, a lot of times adoptive parents, and especially mothers, may feel guilty in taking other people's babies, either through coercion or, for example, my mom had always, she never expressed her guilt, but I could always sense it. She was always kind of like, do you want to go search for your biological mother? She must miss you, and you're somebody else's baby, and I feel bad. So I think that kind of emotion could be suppressed within adoptees themselves. And some adoptees may choose to express loyalty to their adoptive parents by not mentioning it. And that needs a place to be vented. And I do know a gathering by the Chinese Adoptive Collective, I think, in Philadelphia, actually, in the United States. They held their first conference last year, closed door conference for only adoptees. It called Context. It was very, very interesting. And next year they're gonna host. Oh, actually, they held the conference this year. They're gonna host another conference next year, in collaboration with MBL. So I think it's interesting for adoptees to get together and share the feelings that they may have been ashamed of. And that's from an adoptee perspective. Thank you. I was not sure whether I was.
I would agree with that because a lot of the research into the Chinese adoption phenomenon was from the standpoint of the parents, mostly the mothers, because that's the way it is. But the Chinese adoptees are now mostly of age, and I think, and that this goes in general. I have a 25-year-old son who's not an adoptee, but one has to kind of step away at times. So, and I've really tried not to be telling adoptees, oh, you should do this, you should do that, you should do a DNA test. It's like it's what I said, there's no right or wrong answer. It's what's right for you.
Like Barbara said, not knowing and uncertainty is also a choice, and it could also be a maintained option throughout life. There's nothing that we really have to do per se. Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to answer that question as well. And let's move on to our next questions. Oh, actually, I think we're okay. If you have any further questions, please put in the chat box. I think we may have some time for one more question. I do want to ask if you ladies, the two remarkable writers whom we bow to, have any questions to each other.
I have so many questions to Barbara as well. I will take another chance to talk. Partly, and then she is such an experienced person in this case, this kind of project. And also she's a journalist. And the most touched me is her feeling about China and the way she talked about, not like many journalists talk about China. It's like window shopping. I think, Barbara, you are inside China with your heart. And for Chinese women, the way you feel that, I'd love to have a long conversation with you, either in online or in person. I know you come to London as part. So
I will call you next time I'm in London. But as I said, I will. I'm not Chinese, and I'm really interested in your thoughts about how attitudes towards Chinese women have changed. in the post one child policy era, it seemed to me that for women, the one child policy, cut both ways. I mean, I also know many young, youngish Chinese women who, especially the ones raised in cities, who, because they were the only children, had, more opportunity to study, to go abroad. Many of them, were sort of hanging out with the foreign press. So that was our cohort. But I'm really curious about where it's going to go in the future, because now, since the one child policy has been lifted, now the Chinese government is like pushing women to have babies. It's just, complete 180-degree reversal. And there's, I think, a lot of pressure on young women and a lot of hostility towards young women who don't want to get married and have kids. They're called like leftover women. And, I don't know. I guess the question is, how do you see the future for young Chinese women?
Well, I think when you mentioned about this one-child policy, what's the means to the Chinese women? I have to say, the one hand, we have to be honest. Since there's a policy, China got the chance to rebuild by the power. Got the chance to have the power to build up this kind of living condition or this. Before that, the population, fast-growing population with the food, the land, the natural resource or life supply is really struggled. This happened in China before the one-child policy. This is the first thing. I think the world, maybe thanks to China and for the policy, and because it reduced like, how do you say, 400 million population. On the other hand, the Chinese women, particularly in the cities, and really the value rest because there's one child policy. If you go to the big cities and over 100 big cities, the girls' position is much higher than the girl, than the boy. That's no question. And this is why it's the chance in our over 3,000 years history, we never happened. So this is a very good thing for the girls by the one child policy. So girls' position be rest. And the third one, I would say the good things is gave a Chinese population, the people, particularly men, to think, to see how much they have been, how do you say, guided or educated by women. This has never happened before. So this is my personal feeling about one child policy, the good side. Yeah. But another side, my personal, during my journey as a journalist, I really against this policy because that is totally broken, cut off our new generation about family value and our tradition as well. So there's many people struggle the only prize about how to bring up kids. They don't know how to value about family with the siblings, with the sharing, with this kind of communities. So this is a really against. Also, I can see how many single children, they living very rich in the materials way. They don't need to worry about anything, but they are very lonely. Very, very lonely. From my research, I can see that. And MBL, they have so many volunteers, really strong because they found a huge pressure from the family, force them to get good school, to get a good university, to get a good job, to get a good husband, to get a good family. Just 2-3 generations put the pressure on their shoulder, on their daily life, on their daily routines. I think in that way, it's really unfair to those single children. it's not something we have to listen to. Yeah, anyway, this is just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Shinran. Before we wrap up the session, I just have I would just like to go back to my question for Barbara, if that's okay, about Esther. I'd love to hear more about how she's doing now. If you are still in touch with the family, adoptive or birth family, and what are their thoughts about the book after it's come out?
I'm very much in touch with both families. I mean, especially Esther. I mean, I see Esther quite often, a couple of times a year. We actually went to Europe together twice, um, just for fun, and she visits New York quite a bit. Um, uh, she's doing great. She's a photographer. She does wedding photography. She's totally self-taught. She was homeschooled, so she's not had much formal education, but she's very talented and very engaged in the world. She's married and, really doing quite well. Um, she was very supportive of the book. She has the book. I don't know that she's read it because, she got the first copy and, she said she would read it when she was ready, and I haven't heard anything, but I haven't heard anything negative either. The Chinese family has a copy of the book. They don't speak English, but it has photos. And so I think, everybody is content enough. I didn't put, I really tried to preserve to some extent the privacy of the twins in the book, which was hard. So you'll see that you don't see a lot of like big close-ups of the two together where you can like parse their features and see, who has bigger eyes or a bigger nose or this and that. And I didn't write that much about their current situation just because I wanted to, not be too invasive. But I mean, they're both doing well. They've had, their ups and downs. During the pandemic, Shuangjie, you've obviously read the book. She was teaching as a trainee in a kindergarten, and she had this ambition to open her own private kindergarten. But her kindergarten closed during COVID, and now Xi Jinping has closed a lot of the private schools, private kindergartens, as being, not in the socialist spirit. So she's doing tutoring, but I think she's had to um, rejigger her plans. And the Sung family is doing, very well, pretty well. I mean, I think they consider themselves the winners in Chinese society. And, strangely, they they feel like the one-child policy was kind of a good thing. They supported it. As they said, they supported it. They just didn't want to follow it, which I kind of get. But so everybody seems to be okay. Hard to tell because I'm not there. But as I said, my sense is that these people were quite lucky in the way their reunion worked out and the way their lives worked out. I see, a note from Laura here. I mean, a lot of reunions don't work out that well, and adoptees feel, rightfully that they will feel pressured to give more to their birth family, whether it's money or just filial devotion than they want to give. So it can be a complicated thing, but that has not been the case here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Xinran, for such remarkable event and dialogue between you guys, two remarkable female writers that we all look up to. And thank you both for your kindness in preserving adoptees' privacy and helping where you could. And thank you, Barbara, for taking the family to China. And thank you for the book. Thank you for your book, Xinran. Both of your books are going around in the adoptive community. A lot of adoptees have read it, have teared up reading it. And you bring a lot of peace that would otherwise not have been received to the adoptees. And on behalf of all of us, I thank you in sincerity. All right, let's move on to we are a little bit behind time today, but I think it's worth it. To the next session of our event. Next year, my colleague Tongyu is going to take the lead of Adoption Dialogue. And so let's welcome Tongyu to give us a heads up to what we are expecting next year. Tongyu.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the fantastic talk. And I was actually trying to hold myself not to interrupt because a lot of questions and answers are really echoing. For the last year, the volunteer work I've done with MBL. So just to cut long story short, start with introduce myself first. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tongyu Lei. I'm a co-founder of education online company called Capital Class, and also a long-term volunteer with MBL Adoption and Culture Connection programs. With a background of education and cross-cultural work, with MBL, we're particularly involved in program designing such as adoption rules thinking, education parts such as Chinese and Chinese culture and current situation introduction courses customized to adoptees and adoptee families. So I actually do see a familiar face here. I do apologize. I still couldn't pronounce her name properly because it's in Norwegian. It's a very long hi. If you want to switch on your microphone, say hi from Norway. Yeah, Guru, there you are. So currently, we have a Chinese culture course held for adoptee and adoptee families with Norwegian or MBL Norwegian partner, and it's still ongoing. And through the course, we learned a lot from each other. And there are up and downs. We're not going to go through the details, but we have learned a lot. And I'm looking forward for deeper developing this course and add it on whatever adoptee and adoptee family need. And that's actually another reflection of what Barbara mentioned earlier, and Siwei mentioned earlier about being adoptee-only events. That actually was also debating sort of during the course because we didn't have enough groups. So there's a mix, and there was a discussion of whether we should do it separately, should do it together. So it's all coherent to what have mentioned through the talk, and we're still developing that part and going to depth. That is the course we tailored to adoptees. And I was also honored to be invited to the Catch-All. Hi, idea. I don't know if you attend in the Central London, that event. That was an adoptee-only offline dialogue forum. And I learned so much. And also, I think it's true, individual families really different. So the attitude and understanding interpreter the role is different. Interpreter the role as adoptees and the adoptee families are different. So here I'm going to quote what Guru said, actually was very simple but elegant. The more different we're trying to find, the more common we actually found. So this is a very complicated situation, but yeah, so through the course, I have learned a lot. And that's another part of the work we collaborate with MBL. And we looking forward to expanding that. And the research informed communication works, community work such as MBL Online Forum. So the theme for MBL Online Forum 2026 is actually also a coherent echoing for what Barbara mentioned earlier. The theme is called lucky, unlucky, or somewhere in between. This MBL online forum invites participants to reflect on questions and many adoptees, adoptive families, and professionals encounter, but needs to have the more space to develop the depth. That's also the question when I attend Catch offline talk, and they were mentioning, some adoptees were mentioning, I always hear when people talk to me, the first sentence is, aren't you lucky to be adopted as a foreign family? So it's never a simple answer. So we're, through that theme, we'll be developing. And so rather than offering simple answers, the forum will be deliberately holds these questions open. It challenges binary narratives and creates psychological informed space to explore the complexity of life experience shaped by adoption, displacement, loose, resilient, and cross-cultural belonging. So the research and lived experience and psychology will bring the insight. The forum will bring together the PhD researchers and some of our collaborating organization also did questionnaire to the adoptive families as well. And so there's mental health professionals, and we're thinking for community practices as well. So combining academic research with the grounded real world perspective. So we would include some short research-based talk during the current we have PhD students who's researching on British and Chinese adoptees, that issue, and we also have questionnaire summarize and discuss in depth with the parenting part of the questionnaire. So so it will be a combination of, and the survey finding plays central role of the forum. Then they will reveal how terms like lucky or unlucky are frequently used by families, often with good intentions, yet can unintentionally simplify children's experience or leave little room to ambivalent, grief, or contradiction. And will likely will invite a podcast, also adoptee, to either share her own stories or share the story she been heard through her podcasting, and to show the complexity of issue behind. So yeah, our first next year forum we're planning on the 22nd of March. And so we're looking forward to see all of you. And if you could help us to spread or give us some feedback, will be really helpful. And thank you, Siwei. The last year I've attended all your 4 forums, been fantastic, has been really, yeah. So I'm going to hold on to your hand, and I will probably be chasing you to get advice for my program for the design. I really do need your in-depth. Yeah.
Thank you, Tongyu.
Thank you.
Thank you again, everyone, for attending the event today. Thank you again, Xinran and Barbara, who have written these books, have helped us find more peace, and have teared us up a little bit. And thank you for doing your good work. I know you may feel that you're not adoptees yourselves, and you may feel like not belonging to this community may not contribute as much to your writing. But we need all the forces that are possible, that are out there. So you are an ally, and we appreciate your patience and your kindness and your help. And we hope that you'll produce more books and bring more social awareness on this very topic. And We hope to see you again, as Tongyu said, next year in March. On the 22nd of March, we'll host our first event for the year 2026. So long, everybody, and Happy New Year in advance, and Merry belated Christmas, I guess. And hope you a cozy place, as you already are, Barbara, in the cold winter night in New York. And hope Xinyan is having a great trip. Thank you, everyone, again. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Before
Sway.
we go,
Okay.
I'm going
Thank
to
you so
post the
much.
YouTube link.
快乐。
I'm going to
Thank you.
post the YouTube link into the chat. If you want to watch the replay, you can just
Okay.
click on the link anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
谢
Thank
谢，
you.
谢谢童宇，谢谢四位，
Yeah.
谢谢 Barbara and Andy. Yeah, 谢谢。
谢谢
And all
Abby.
the translators. It's amazing. Thank you,
Yes.
interpreter.
Yep.
谢谢金环. You have been amazing interpreters.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, so many friends. Thank you, Sue. Yeah, everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Happy holidays.
Okay,
Yeah,
新年快乐.
Laura,
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah.
bye-bye.
Well, great. 谢谢四位，累坏了吧？
没事，
Early
谢谢 Abby.
morning, early morning. Thank you.
I'm
志
really
浩
sorry.
志浩可能刚刚睡醒，睁眼第一个信息就问我还顺利吗？我一看那个时间，可能志浩那边刚早上起来吧。
Yeah, early morning.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have done it without Addie. She's helped a lot.
Yeah.
No, it was all you, Siwei.
Yeah. Addie
Nice.
has a wonderful project. I'm waiting for her. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Eddie. Were you in the? Did you came to the Catch the offline talk in Central London in October?
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't able to attend that one.
I see. Right. Would you mind if I share my contact with you?
Sure, of course.
I'm trying to arrange a gathering. We bring some adoptees to go and visit Xinran in the end of January with the head of founder of the Cat Show.
Oh, okay.
And if you're able to join us, will be lovely.
Okay, yeah, I could try. I'm based in Edinburgh.
I see.
Yeah, so I'm not actually in London. But I
Yeah.
would love to go and meet up with everybody in Shinran in London if I can.
Yeah, sure. Laura,
Yeah.
I saw your message and we can meet up and I will listen to your idea about your book and also I have met your group.
Yes,
Any
yes,
of them from
yes.
you all adopted from 1960 to 1963. Yeah.
Yeah, we all, there's
Martin
600.
Clark, yeah, Lucy, the many of yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the same group as Lucy.
From your family, yeah. We can talk later.
It
Yeah.
would be lovely to meet you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for a really, really